All right, this is Tom, and I am really excited because I am just a history enthusiast. I'm no expert, but today I'm joined by an actual expert who I have a billion questions for. So, with me is a real life archaeologist, very cool, Zac Lindsey. And Zac, tell me a little bit about yourself, and thanks for being with me.
Yeah, so thanks for the kind words. I started off in archaeology. I was originally a journalist, so I've always been interested in communicating big ideas to people, especially ideas that maybe like really technical, but people deserve to understand. So I've always really been interested in communicating with folks. And the reason that I got into archaeology specifically was because I visited a site in Mexico City called Teotihuacan. And if y'all haven't heard of that site, it's one of the absolute most beautiful cities, ancient cities in the world, really all over the planet, right? It could be definitely considered one of the wonders of the ancient world. Massive pyramids there, massive structures, and really amazing city planning and beautiful murals that still survive today. And when I saw those murals, I just really wanted to understand them. And so I started to feel myself getting a little bit pulled away from journalism, becoming more and more interested in the ancient past. And I'm not going to lie, journalism does not pay very good. So I like to joke with people that I'm the only archaeologist who ever got into archaeology for the money. And I definitely have made more money off of archaeology than journalism, so I'm going to keep at it for the time being.
That's good to know. Good to know. Teotihuacan, yeah, I think that's one of the places that blew my mind initially in Mexico. I think it's one of the coolest things I've ever seen. I grew up going to Italy a lot, and so I'm so familiar with like the Roman ruins and Greek ruins and things like that. And I've always just only thought about that. But the first time I went to Teotihuacan, it changed my whole concept of human history, and like I really started to refocus on Mesoamerica. So you are particularly, though, focused in on the Maya now, correct?
Yep, yeah. And that's because I have always had an interest in writing. Like I mentioned, I was a journalist, and the Maya have a full writing system, which means they can write entire sentences in the ancient hieroglyphic system. It's pretty rare that somebody developed all across the world. I think there's a debate about how many there actually is, but there are no more than 7 times over the course of human history that we've developed an entire complete writing system. Talks about proto writing, blah blah blah. You can just write nouns and all that kind of stuff. But the ancient Maya could write their entire thoughts out in a full sentence. And that's something that is very rare. So once I started learning that about the ancient Maya, getting to actually read their words in their own voice was so cool that as much as I loved Teotihuacan and as much as it changed my life and opened my eyes towards what ancient culture could be, I kind of started to drift away from that and get more and more focused in the Maya because of their really absolutely gorgeous writing system.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of it. Obviously, I can't crack it at all. It's pretty, though, to look at. So, what is a day to day for an archaeologist kind of look like? What is it that you do?
So it really differs. Very big job when we talk about what is an archaeologist. There's lots of different ways that people participate in archaeology. A lot of what I've been doing lately is urban cataloging. So basically, we're just doing LiDAR of local urban sites that are in danger because of urbanization. There's a lot of ancient sites in Mexico, and one of the most exciting things about LiDAR recently has been to show how many ancient sites there are. And that's awesome, but it also means that there is, unfortunately, a tug of war going on between how big does a site need to be before it's worth saving, how important does it need to be before it's worth saving, because you've got to build things, but at the same time you have to do so in a way that respects what it has is already here. And so right now, a big part of what I'm doing is just going out to these little urban sites and taking pictures, cataloging them, doing photogrammetry, which is 3D modeling. And it doesn't really look like what you would expect archaeology to look like. I spend a lot of time walking through random neighborhoods and taking pictures of hills and taking pictures of trash piles and things like that. Unlike Indiana Jones, I don't normally worry about snakes, but I have had to worry about some stray dogs from time to time.
Right.
And that is just absolutely one aspect of archaeology, right? I've also done field work where you're out in the middle of the jungle and, hitting stuff with a pickaxe and, using the little brush. And that's certainly a part of archaeology as well. So archaeology is a very flexible discipline, and a lot of things fall under it, things you might not always necessarily think of as archaeology. Another thing that a lot of people don't really think of when they think of archaeology is studying historical documents. But here in Yucatan, where the Spaniards did chronicle a lot of the early colonial era, historical documents can be really important to understanding ancient people as well. So the discipline of archaeology, we always sort of think of the people digging in the sun and cracking ancient mysteries, and it's not to say that doesn't happen. I mean, there are plenty of archaeologists I know who have had some very exciting stories, heard lots of stories about people being chased with shotguns by looters and things like that. Luckily, that's not normally what I'm dealing with when I'm walking around a city neighborhood taking pictures of an old hill.
Yeah, to each their own, right? What's your favorite part? So if you could pick any aspect of it, like what is it that you could do forever?
That's a really tough question. What I think one of the things that is so inspiring about archaeology is how much it changes over time and how much your role can change just depending on what project you're having access to. I did a project where I was doing maps with ArcGIS. I did a project where, well, like I said, I've done field work and I've done cataloging of ceramic sherds and lots of different things within archaeology, and getting to do different things on a regular basis is actually the fun part. So as far as nailing me down to what I like best,
Yeah.
part of what I like best about it is that I have done very, very different things throughout my career as an archaeologist. Actually, I studied, one of the things that I studied mostly was royal art. So the fact that now the thing that I'm doing is studying hills in urban environments is kind of completely different than what I studied in school.
Excellent. So you mentioned kind of what you're doing now is looking at these sites that are kind of hidden in, or they were hidden by either the jungle or just kind of covered in urban environments, right? So these are kind of lesser known places that are just being discovered. What are some places that you've been that aren't like the Chichen Itzas, like the big time places? Have you found anything or seen anything that's really cool or worth visiting for someone like me who's kind of just looking for stuff to see?
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely incredible how much there is. Just here in the city of Merida, most people, when they think of Merida, Mexico, they think of the colonial downtown and these old historic churches, which are obviously very beautiful. What a lot of people don't know is that there are actually 212 prehistoric structures in the city of Merida itself. So you can walk around the city environment and come across these structures. They're not anything as impressive as Chichen Itza. If someone were to say, should I go to the park of Choclan that you like so much, or should I go to Chichen Itza? I'd probably tell you, unless you're very serious about this stuff and you've already been to those sites many times, you probably want to go to Chichen Itza because it really is the sort of the mind blowing experience. But what a lot of these sites have that is really cool for folks who have been to places like Chichen Itza already are they will oftentimes, the smaller sites will have one or two things that are really cool, really inspiring, and really kind of change the way that you look at ancient people. But it's not so much these grand giant pyramids. Those, everybody knows kind of where the giant pyramids are already. So hard to get to one of those kind of places without too many tourists.
I would say for me, some of the most impactful type of visits I've had are very similar. Now, I haven't gone so far off the beaten path as to where to like that, for example, but places where there's nobody and you kind of just feel like you're alone with all of it. Like Sail was one of the ones that I had gone to. It was very quiet and it was just really cool to like roam around by myself.
There's a site very close to where I live right now. It's only about a 20-minute walk from my house, and it's a beautiful site. Very small. Not a lot of people go there, but it is a city park, so you can kind of go and enjoy yourself and sit out by the pyramid and just relax and enjoy yourself. And again, not anything as impressive as Chichen Itza, not giant ball courts and that kind of thing, but getting out there, like you said, and just being able to be by yourself and to relax and to kind of think about what ancient people might have been doing in the plazas and that sort of thing. It really it is one of my favorite sites. I also think they've done a really good job of restoring it and incorporating it into the urban environment. I've taken people there and they are very surprised how much it feels like you're in the middle of the jungle, even though you're in a city of close to 2 million people at this point. And so Shoklan, I think, is really one of my favorite sites, but you're never going to find it on a list of, top 10 sites you need to visit in Yucatan, or really even top 10 off the beaten path sites that you're going to go to, because part of the reason that I connect so well with that site is how close it is to my house, and the fact that I have spent a lot of time there just relaxing and enjoying it. So I think that isn't the answer people want to hear,
That's the answer
but
I
it is
wanted
kind
to
of my
hear.
answer as to whenever I think. Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no, that's what I
it's
wanted
the
to
answer
hear.
that I
Yeah.
have. It really is great.
Yeah, no, it's perfect because it kind of wraps it up. It's impressive, but it's also sentimental, right? Just the fact that it's your local place. I think we all have, whether it's an ancient ruin or not, we kind of have something that might be unimpressive, but it's sentimental and it's nearby and it means so much. So I think that's really cool. I don't have that. Obviously, I mean, we have some mounds here in Florida that I like going to, but like in Palm Beach County and Broward, a lot of them are condos now, so there's not many to sit and reflect. But in Mexico, I would say I think when I did the Puc route, that was probably my favorite thing that I had done. And I know Uxmal is very busy, but just it was incredible to. But some of those smaller ones, like along the way, I really just having that feeling and like you said, thinking about what these people were doing, what it would have looked like was just like you could spend hours there.
You mentioned Sayil. That is such a great site, and it's really kind of
Yeah.
exactly what I was talking about. How you'll see these sites where it's a tiny site, you're the only person there, one absolutely amazing building that just blows you away.
Yeah.
Not a whole lot else at Sayil to see, some other cool stuff, but that one building is so worth the trip. Those do tend to be my favorite sites, so I totally relate to that experience of going to those little Puig sites and seeing, that one very famous building at Sayil, or
Yeah.
some of the cool stuff at Labna, the arches and that sort of
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah, the arch is incredible. And I think one of the things too, like about Sail, it wasn't even it's like the palace that's there. There's a smaller pyramid that just had not been reconstructed, right? So it was just true ruins of a pyramid. And that with and I don't know what it's called, the comb on top that it had it intact. What do they call it?
Yep.
I don't know. Okay. So, but just to kind of see a pyramid that wasn't touched and redone and like made to look nice was actually very cool too, because you don't see them like that when you go to Chichen. You see them like in pristine shape. So to feel like you're in a ruin, it was cool. So yeah, I absolutely loved it there. So I'm very jealous of what you get to do and see every day. I can't get down there enough. I have to plan it very meticulously every time I come. Like, what am I going to do? So, any advice for someone like me who is an enthusiast, but who likes to get down there, who likes to get their hands dirty and likes to learn? Because it's too late for me to become an archaeologist. We'll put it that way. But what do you have like for advice to me to step my game up, and for people who just are really into it to actually do something about it?
Yeah, great question. So the first thing I want to say is, here in Mexico, it's a little harder to get involved in digs unless you have the right connections and know people who know people. In Belize, there are a few organizations that do field schools for university students, but they're also open to the public. So you can go down for a week, 2 weeks, get the chance to do some digging at a Maya site without, I mean, it costs money. It's not like it's free, but
Sure.
you get lodging, and your meals are paid for. So it can be it's sort of an educational vacation experience, right?
Okay.
And you can do that. There's one of my favorites is called BVAR, Belize Valley Archaeological Reconnaissance, I think.
Okay.
Sorry if I get that wrong, but that's run by a guy named Dr. Jaime Awe. Absolutely great person. You can go out to his digs and work on the dig, get the chance to handle a trowel. If you're more into ceramics, I know he occasionally has folks come by and just do ceramic restoration, so you get to put all the puzzle pieces together. And if you only have 2 weeks to do it, they can help you out with that. And to your point about being too old, it might be that you're too old to actually make the career shift, but the idea of you going down and getting to hang out and try out archaeology, see what it's like, you are really not too old for that. When I did BVAR, there were two folks there. One of them was 72 and one of them was 81.
Wow.
And I'm not going to say the 81-year-old was, getting down in the dirt, although the 72-year-old was surprisingly spry. But the fact is, there are still ways that you can help out on an archaeological project and get the experience. So, I'm not getting paid by BVAR or anything like that. There are some
Oh,
other
that's
ones that I
great.
really like too, like MRP. But there are Beletian programs where you can go down and just spend 2 weeks or just spend a week and get the chance to see what it is like to dig. So there are definitely ways to really get in there and get your hands dirty. If you just kind of want to go around and travel the Maya area, there's lots of different ways to do that. You can, of course, just rent a car and drive around yourself, but, that's kind of a pain in the butt. I don't really I don't have a car here, and most things that are done here are done via public transportation. So you kind of got to get used to the public transportation here unless you get a guide to take you out to the sites. Guides can be really, really great. I know some really, really good guides. A lot of times I know people are like, well, I don't want to spend the money on a guide. I can just go and walk around myself. And yes, you can do that. If you really want to understand what you're seeing, though, it really does help to have a guide with you. So, if there's a local guide at the site who sits with you the right way, definitely be willing to pay for a guide, especially if you have a decent sized group. And I've gone. I am an archaeologist. I studied this stuff in university, and yet sometimes when I go to sites, I still get a guide because the locals know their own sites better than we really ever can.
You bring up the guides, and this might be a helpful tip for travelers, is we know at every site there's guides with the binder, whatever, right? And they want to do that. And a lot of people are very
Yeah.
skeptical of doing that. What's your advice? I mean, like you said, they may know more than anyone, right?
Yeah, I
What
mean,
do we
it's
look
like
out
every
for?
job, right? You occasionally get, right. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. It's a good question. Unfortunately, it's a little bit hard to really vet them extensively when you're just
right.
standing there at the ticket booth. So that's one reason that if you can find a service that goes down, like this time, I guess I am doing a little bit of advertising, but the Maya Exploration Center, we go all over the Maya region. We also go to some places outside the Maya region, all in the Americas. We do a Peru trip, we do an Easter Island
Nice.
trip, we do Mexico City and all that. So obviously, I would recommend us because I can say for a fact that Ed Barnhart, the leader of the Maya Exploration Center, absolutely brilliant guy, maps Palenque, very important archaeologist, and so he doesn't just let anybody work with him, and we work with hand-selected local guides who are all folks that we have personally vetted ahead of time. So that's kind of one of the reasons to work with maybe like a bigger company, because if it's a company that you trust, if you go to their website and you see that they have academic knowledge and they're not talking about stuffing you on a big bus full of 80 people, small groups tend to be best. You're going to get to enjoy the sites better if you're on a small group. And so that is definitely one way that you can kind of mitigate that. That said, I mean, if you go to a site and you start talking to a guide and you get a good vibe from him or her, there's no reason not to use them. I have met some guys. Most of the guys that I met are really high quality, and they manage to do both two things. They manage to be entertaining and they manage to be
Yeah.
educational, right? And you want a guide who can do both of those things. Every once in a while, you'll get one who is just educational and not entertaining, and every once in a while, you'll get one who's entertaining and not educational. And then, of course, every once in a while, I would say probably less than 10% of the time, you get somebody who is just, not
Okay.
having a great day at work or something like that, and they're not maybe the best guide. But I think you'd be surprised how many of the folks that work at those archaeology sites really do have a great foundational knowledge. I know a woman at Chunkuhub Chek Ben, who when she was little, since the time that she was 2 or 3 years old, she was walking around that site, exploring it as a little girl. I know a couple of people who have similar situations in places like Zibanche or even at Chichen Itza. And so those guides really have a deep foundational knowledge of the site. They will, they'll tell you kind of what you want to hear. So if you're asking lots of questions about, is there, what is the sacred energy of this pyramid? At first they might kind of push back, and then they'll be like, okay, maybe there is sacred
Right.
energy here. I don't know. And that is something that, I don't want to fault the guides for doing, because they want to make sure that you're happy and that you're enjoying your trip. So, you have to kind of let them speak and not fill in what they're saying, so that, because if you start to fill in what you want them to say, and if you start to bring beliefs that you have into the tour, they're going to go with those beliefs because they don't want you to be unhappy. But again, if you go in with an open mind and let them explain things as they see it, you're going to get an absolutely great story about the site, and you're going to know a lot more about the site than somebody who just goes and walks around.
All right, solid advice from an archaeologist.